Let's get right into it, shall we? We begin in Russia, where President Vladimir Putin has a lot to say about the special military operation in Ukraine, the sanctions imposed by Western countries and the entire world. Well, he says sanctions imposed on Russia for invading Ukraine have had little or no impact, as Russia is coping with the West's economic aggression. This would be one of those moments the Russian president would address major issues in Russia and around the world. But now the focus is on Ukraine. He was speaking to participants of the Eastern Economic Forum in the city of Vladivostok. Today he warned the West that it had undermined the global economy with what he cast as a futile and aggressive attempt to impose hegemony, casting the rising powers of Asia as the future. The United States and its allies imposed most severe sanctions in modern history on Russia for its so-called special military operation in Ukraine. Putin said the sanctions had replaced the COVID-19 pandemic as the main threat to the global economy. After the pandemic, he says, different challenges arrived that have also been global in nature and pose a danger to the whole world. I'm talking about the West sanctions fever, its brazen and aggressive attempts to force others how to behave, deprive them of their sovereignty and force them into submission. There is nothing unusual about that. This policy has been used by the West for decades.
Я думаю, что уверен, ничего мы не потеряли и ничего не потеряем.
Speaking further, he said he was sure that Russia has not lost anything and will not lose anything over actions in Ukraine. And I can only say that the main gain is the strengthening of our sovereignty. That is the inevitable result of what is going on now. Yes, of course, a certain polarization is taking place, both in the world and inside the country. I think this is only for the best. He also blamed Germany and Western sanctions for the Nord Stream 1 pipeline not being operational, and that Ukraine and Poland decided on their own to switch off their gas routes into Europe, and that Russia would have no problem selling its vast energy resources around the world, despite Western sanctions designed to cut off Kremlin's vital energy revenues. He said Russia would not stop supplying gas and oil if price caps are imposed on Russia's energy resources, telling the audience, like I said, we won't supply anything that goes beyond our contracts. We won't do anything that was imposed on us. There'll be only one thing left for us. Just like in a Russian fairy tale, we'll be saying, freeze, freeze, the wolf's tail.
Мы ничего не строим, мы технологии получили соответствующие, отработали. Если нужно будет, пожалуйста, мы включим Северный поток-2.
Then he faces a threat to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, saying that Ukraine is the one threatening Europe's nuclear security by shelling the plant, and that Russia had no military equipment at the facility.
Но на территории станции нет военной техники.
President Putin says he trusts the report from the International Atomic Energy Agency, which visited the power station last week. But he criticized the UN body for not saying that Ukraine was to blame for shelling on the site. Kyiv and Moscow both blame each other for military attacks on the site, which has triggered fears of a Chernobyl-style nuclear disaster at Europe's largest nuclear power station. Now, Turkish President Recep Erdogan says he does not think the West's provocative policies towards Russia are correct. After they proposed a price cap on Russian gas, Russian President Vladimir Putin had earlier threatened to halt all supplies if the EU took such a step, raising the risk of rationing in some of the world's richest countries this winter. President Erdogan told a press conference this afternoon, because there is a West that is leading a policy based on provocation, it will not be possible to achieve a result there. Russia has already indefinitely halted the flows through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline and has cut or shut down supplies on 3 of its biggest westward gas pipelines since its invasion of Ukraine. Oil supplies have also been redirected eastwards. In other developing stories, Ukraine says it's looking at shutting down the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant for safety reasons and is worried about the reserves of diesel fuel used for backup generators. A comment is coming from the country's top nuclear safety expert, Mikhailo Polyak, who advises the government on these issues. The imperiled facility, Europe's largest nuclear power plant, remains disconnected from the Ukrainian grid after shelling cut its external power lines. Moscow and Kyiv accuse each other of shelling the plant, risking a nuclear disaster. Well, he said the facility was supplying its own electricity needs, but the backup diesel generators would have to be fired up if it remained disconnected, though he gave no time frame for that eventuality. But let's get inside Ukraine now through the lens of this eyewitness video that shows Ukrainian soldiers in vehicles at a crossroads in Volokhiv Yar in Kharkiv region. The village of Volokhiv Yar was captured early by Russian forces invading Ukraine. It lies 20 kilometers northeast of Balaklia. We cannot confirm the location of the video, which we're hoping will come up right now. From the layout of the road and the buildings, they're seen in the video, which match the satellite photography of the area. But one of the correspondents on the ground was not able to confirm the date that it was shot. There are several posts on social media from military bloggers and witnesses reporting fighting around Balaklia, a town of 27,000 people. It lies between the cities of Kharkiv and Izium. Control of Balaklia could facilitate a Ukrainian attempt to encircle or partially encircle the Russian-held city of Izium, according to the Ukrainian army. So sorry we couldn't bring you that video. Let's bring in the VOA's Anna Chernikova. She's in Kyiv. Anna, great to see you as always. Now, I'm sure that the Ukrainian government listened to the Russian president as he expressed his thoughts on the sanctions imposed by the West, thousands of them, I might add, cutting off oil and gas supply and blaming Ukraine for the attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Has there been a response to these comments from the Ukrainian government?
Good evening. So let's start with President Putin's announcements and comments at the meeting, at the event. We have comments from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Mr. Dmytro Kuleba. I would quote him. He said that Putin has just publicly confessed to the crime of aggression against Ukraine, as Putin during his speech mentioned that we did it consciously. And Mr. Kuleba said that I once again call on all states back the creation of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. The crime is on the plain side. Justice must be served. This is so far one of the main reactions, and the main, I should say, reaction from the Ukrainian officials. It might be that President Zelensky also will mention something about the speech in his every evening, in his evening speeches he's doing every day, but we will see. We will have to wait for this. In general, Ukrainian authorities have already, I think, said a lot about any kind of such comments, because Ukrainian authorities have already confirmed previously that that Russia did it on purpose. So Ukrainian position was from the very beginning that it was planned action and with certain purpose, and that whatever again Russian side is blaming Ukraine in any aggression or anything like that, this is basically something that none of the countries in the world confirms that Ukraine, planned any aggression. But we have this war at this point of time. So I think that for the moment, I should say that the main reaction is that special tribunal should be created to judge the actions of the Russian state. But this is again, for the moment, what we have from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
Yeah. And does Ukraine think those sanctions are working on Russia? President Volodymyr Zelensky has for weeks now been calling on European countries to impose more debilitating sanctions on Russia, as sanctions will cripple its economy. But as we've heard President Putin say, those sanctions have been good for the Russian economy. In fact, it's strengthened the Russian economy, he says, and the rest of the world might even be looking to Asia at the moment.
This comments definitely, comments for Russian people, I guess, because this is something that Mr. Putin, as president of his country, should probably ensuring his people that nothing is wrong. But again, if we look at the international analysis of different experts from different countries, and again, in Ukraine as well, everyone understands that sanctions are working, but of course they are not fast to work. So sanctions take a lot of time, sometimes more, sometimes less. But we definitely can see that, and also reports that we hear from the inside of Russian state, that well, it would be not correct to say that Russia is benefiting from the sanctions. This is definitely not the case, at least again, according to the reports from the inside, from different, from some media resources and from bloggers and from people who remain in the country. But Ukraine understands that sanctions will take time to work, and this is why Ukrainian authorities and President Zelensky in particular encourage Europe to continue with this kind of politics, because war is going on, and for the moment we definitely can see that Russia still gets enough income from the European countries and from from different kind of.
I do apologize. Seems to have lost connection with Anna. We'll try to reconnect with her and continue this conversation. But speaking of gas prices going up, which we'll be discussing with Anna in just a minute, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the Commission will be proposing a price cap on Russian gas, alongside measures including a mandatory EU cut in electricity use and a cap on the revenue of non-gas power generators. Some EU countries which would need to approve the EU proposals are wary of capping Russian gas prices in case that costs them the dwindling supply that they still receive from Moscow. Ms. von der Leyen outlined the EU's upcoming emergency proposals to lower soaring gas and power prices, which have hiked bills for households and hammered Europe's energy-intensive industries. She also says the EU wants to cap the revenue of non-gas fuel generators and rechannel their unexpected profits into measures to support households and companies. India was at the forum in Vladivostok today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi attending via video conference, saying India is keen to boost cooperation with Russia, particularly in the areas of energy and cooking coal. The Indian Prime Minister also called for a diplomatic and peaceful solution to the Ukraine crisis. India has refrained from condemning Russia, given its long-standing security ties, and sharply boosted Russian crude oil purchases in recent months. More on those energy prices now. Austria's government has outlined a plan to help households cope with these soaring bills by partly subsidizing costs beyond what it calls the pre-crisis level. According to Energy Minister Karl Nehammer, a plan which must still be approved by Parliament would provide the average household with around €500 in aid per year until June 2024 and cost roughly €3 to €4 billion. Austria would automatically reimburse up to 30 cents per kilowatt hour, and households are charged beyond 10 cents per kilowatt hour up to an annual limit of 2,900 kilowatt hours, according to the Energy Minister. He also says 2,900 kilowatt hours was 80% of the average household use. A power market regulator, E-Control, however, says roughly half of Austria's households use less than 2,500 kilowatts per hour a year. But the economists whose idea the plan is based on criticize the plan because the subsidized amount is based on a single national average rather than tailored to each household, meaning it will be simply too high or too low for many and thus provide less encouragement to reduce power consumption.